What's good, y'all? It's Manda, and I'm back with another video for you guys. The final episode of What If just came out, so of course we have to talk about it. The 9-episode series was the first MCU project to go into multiple other universes and explore other possible realities. I have my issues with it here or there, but there are also plenty of things I like about it. Make sure to like the video and subscribe and all that stuff. Okay, let's get right into it. I was extremely excited for the show when the trailer came out. It seemed like they came up with a bunch of extremely interesting concepts that could all be amazing in their own way. Were there other options that probably could have been more interesting? Definitely. In fact, I have a long list of what if ideas that I would want to see. Either way, the ideas they had weren't bad at all, and some were actually pretty great. The issues that certain episodes had were execution of these ideas. The first episode, Captain Carter, was the weakest of the show for me. The pacing was awful, way too fast. The writing kinda sucked, and I didn't care for the final battle with the giant octopus monster. I found the Hydra Stomper cool, but other than that, this was a really weak one. You'd never catch me rewatching this episode if I'm being honest. T'Challa's episode was the first one in the show that I actually liked. It was kinda sad since it was Chadwick's last performance, but it was really heartwarming, especially the end when T'Challa introduced his families to each other. One problem I did have with this episode was how weak Thanos was. Bro was losing to Black Dwarf and Proxima Midnight, like come on. Even a peaceful Thanos should not struggle against him. Other than that, this was an intriguing story. I like that they actually made Star-Lord a legend to the point that enemies were honored to lose to him. The twist that Nebula and T'Challa had their own plan all along caught me a bit off guard, and the final fight against the Collector was awesome. Overall, this was very enjoyable, plus Nebula was hot, so this is automatically peak fiction. The third episode is an underrated one in my opinion. The mystery of who was killing the Avengers was extremely interesting. I had no clue who it was until Nat mentioned Hope. The different ways Hank took down the Avengers were pretty genius, and the reveal didn't disappoint me. I expected it to be someone more powerful, but the fact that it was him made it even more cool because he isn't an enormous powerhouse. Not a top tier episode, but very solid. It's been kind of overlooked from what I've seen, but I think it's top 5. Maybe we'll see something in the future with Captain Marvel and the remaining heroes ending Loki's rule on Earth. Episode 4 was definitely a top tier episode and the best in the show for a while before we got to episode 8. Strange's suffering here hit harder and harder the more we watched Christine die with him. It isn't hard to see why Evil Strange made the choices that he made. The Ancient One's split of Strange was a little confusing, but it created one of the best magical fights in the MCU. I swear Marvel only knows how to do great magical battles when it comes to Strange. Wanda vs. Agatha was just the two of them throwing balls at each other, even though Agatha was alive for hundreds of years and should have vast magical knowledge. The ending was magnificent. Usually characters are told the drawbacks of their actions and then break the rules anyway and nothing ever happens, but here, Strange actually had to suffer the consequences. His whole universe destroyed and being left alone in a tiny ball. It was kind of refreshing. The Zombies episode was the one I was most hyped for, and I'll be honest, it was kind of a letdown. My main issue was, of course, the comedy. This was one episode that I wanted to be completely free of jokes in the usual MCU comedy style. Zombies is literally one of the darkest comics in Marvel history. It annoys me that the MCU wasted one of the chances to see how horrific they could get. With that being said, there were a few moments that were kind of disturbing. Bucky being forced to slice Steve in half with a shield could have been focused on more. He treated killing his best friend way too casually, and if the episode was longer, they could have focused on the effect it had on him. While I have my issues with this episode, I do like the theme of hope, especially what Peter said to Wasp. The Vision and Wanda twist was also really good. Very flawed episode, but it had its moments. Episode 6 is a controversial episode, but I actually disagree with a lot of the criticisms of it. I've seen some people say that it ruins Killmonger's character and it just makes him power hungry, but he literally had the exact same goal as he did in Black Panther. He just went about it differently and, to be honest, in a much more interesting way. His plan was genius and very complex once you break it down. I think 6 was solid in a similar way to episode 3. The concept was pretty good and the execution was decent. Episode 7 was by far the most fun episode. Party Thor being a complete dickhead throughout the episode was hilarious. The Captain Marvel vs. Thor fight was awesome too, one of the best fights in the MCU. There's been a lot of debate over who's stronger based on this fight, but it's pretty obvious that it's really Thor. Neither of them did any real damage to each other, and they both punched each other across continents. Captain Marvel said she wasn't trying because she didn't want to put a crater on Earth, but Thor was drunk, joking around the whole time, hadn't awakened his true powers yet, and didn't take the fight seriously at all. Based on that, you can't tell who's stronger, but the part that really shows it is when Thor pins down Captain Marvel with Mjolnir and she can't lift it. In this universe, there is no worthy enchantment on Mjolnir due to the events that caused it never taking place. That means Carol was simply not strong enough to lift it, unless there's something in the show I missed that proves otherwise. All that aside, I thought the fight was cool, and Thor being treated like a kid that needed to be watched throughout the episode was hilarious. It wasn't the best, but it's in my top tier of favorites. The moment it came out, episode 8 replaced 4 as the best one in the show in my opinion. Years after the disappointment called Age of Ultron, one of the greatest Marvel villains finally got his proper respect in the MCU. Some people have a problem with the fact that Ultron just sliced Thanos in half for no issue because they think Vision could have just done that in Infinity War. There's two things wrong with that. First, Vision is not as ruthless as Ultron. Second, he was still healing from being stabbed. Another issue people have was that the stones shouldn't work outside their reality, but that was never stated. We just assumed that because that's how it works in the comics. With what we know now, here's what I think. The stones can work anywhere in the multiverse and in any timeline. The TVA exists outside time, meaning the stones are useless there. It's the most sensible explanation. Ultron noticing the Watcher was extremely creepy and unsettling, but also kind of funny at the same time. Uatu was so caught up in monologuing that he wasn't even aware he was saying that Ultron had seen him. A nearly all-powerful being saying what the hell is hilarious to me. Ultron punching Uatu through realities was ridiculously awesome. Their fight was easily a top tier one in the show. An underrated part of this episode is Hawkeye's character. He was tired, depressed, and sick of fighting. You could already see he was defeated and ready to give up while him and Nat were searching for the files. When the last hope that they had didn't work, the already defeated Clint was just finished with life. Some people have an issue with Clint basically killing himself to save Nat when it didn't seem necessary, but he was clearly struggling and wanted to die. In my opinion, it was a depressing but understandable ending for him. Now for the finale. Half an hour of pure ridiculousness and some of the coolest moments the MCU's had in years. Like bruh, Strange literally caught a galaxy-destroying explosion and ate it. I think most comic fans were shitting themselves during the whole final fight. I've almost never seen action like that in comic book movies or shows. Teams attacking perfectly and completely in sync, all their moves coordinated at the same time instead of going at the enemy one by one. It was so smooth. I loved every second of it. One issue I had was that I feel like we were supposed to know Gamora's story already, which means that they most likely cut her episode. Maybe they finally got tired of shitting all over Thanos in the show, because apparently she defeats him in it, and that would be too many L's to count for the guy in the span of 9 episodes. Another small problem was the fact that the Watcher got to pick out of infinite universes and he decided on a team that was half street level heroes. The only reason this isn't a big plot hole is because it's implied that the Watcher predicted certain things and planned perfectly for the last moment, which would make sense with his high intelligence level. Okay, it's about that time. Here's my ranking of the 9 episodes from worst to best with the ratings as well. Coming in last is, of course, Captain Carter, which I rate a 4 out of 10. 8th goes to Zombies, which I give a 5.5. 7th is T'Challa as Star-Lord, which is a 6.5 for me. 6th is Killmonger's episode, a 7 out of 10. 5th is Party Thor, which I give a low 7 out of 10. 4th is Dead Avengers, an underrated episode that I give an 8 out of 10. 3rd is the finale, which I give a low 8 out of 10. 2nd place is Strange's episode, which I give a 9 out of 10. The best episode in the show, in my opinion, was Ultron's. I give it a low 9 out of 10. Overall, the show was solid. It had its ups and it certainly had its downs. I'll definitely be rewatching quite a few of these episodes. The show also heavily shifted the power levels of the MCU. Remember when the most powerful character we could think of was Dormammu? Now we have Ultron chomping on galaxies and Strange swallowing galaxy-level attacks. Pretty cool to see. There's plenty of things I'd change if I could, but I'm actually fine with what we got. My final rating for What If is a high 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you think of the show in the comments. I'd really like to know. Like, subscribe, and all that stuff. New video will be coming out soon, so watch out for it. See you guys next time.